Hey everyone, this is the curriculum for a 3-part character design series. We'll go through the entire creative process of designing and painting a character in a semi-realistic style. Also in this series, we'll be taking a look at the fundamental art skills that are being used each step of the way. Okay, you ready? Here's the project brief. Vladimir is a burly, sword-wielding psycho. He stalks his prey on the streets and fears no man. And we got some clothing and age notes. Let's get to work. I'd like to quickly talk about gesture drawing using this piece of reference. Can you see the overall C curve running through this pose? Also, these secondary C curves that kind of rhyme with that action. Lines of action are what gesture drawing is all about. So let's do a gesture drawing of this pose. I'll start with the main action line and get in some of these secondary lines of action. Now I kind of want to plot out the head because general proportion is a consideration in a gesture drawing, even though I'm definitely not considering the actual forms yet. So I'll kind of plot out where the shoulders are, where the hips are. That kind of helps me delineate the body, maybe kind of where the foot might end up somewhere down there, this foot as well. But more than anything, what I'm interested in is feeling the thrust of the chest, the arc of the back. I'll make sure everything I do here supports that C-curve rhythm I've established through the body. This arm is a very subtle, almost actually kind of an S-curve. Even the way the head kind of flows into the body, it all connects rhythmically. I'll even think of the hair as an extension of these rhythms. You notice I'm using a brush that's not allowing me to draw any kind of detail. I'm not even trying to draw volume or form. Above all else, a gesture drawing should evoke the brief moment in time that this pose exists in. Now, is this a work of art in and of itself? Hardly. Is it a critical tool for understanding the pose? Certainly. You know, another critical tool I use is Wix, which is helping to bring you this character series. If you're an artist and not a web designer like me, you can get started with one of Wix's many templates. Just pick one you like and Wix's editor loads up. Now using the editor, we can customize to our heart's content. Watch how user-friendly this is. I'll drag an image into the uploader, there it is, and my front page is already taking shape. Want a gallery? Simple. Just strip mine this pre-built one, drag and drop some images, and then customize to a slick presentation that doesn't sacrifice quality. Wix has reliable, safe, and secure hosting, custom mailboxes, unlimited pages. Search for your very own custom domain. I've been with Wix for 5 years, and I rest easy knowing my work is being presented to the public and to clients in a professional way. You can have that too, right now, for free, at wix.com/go/Marco Bucci. So why not give it a shot and bring another dimension to your art or your business with Wix? So let's explore Vladimir's body language with gestures drawn freely from imagination. And I'll try out different rhythms here, like maybe a curve against some straights. And this is a start. Proportions are a bit on the cartoony side though. Okay, let's try something different for this one. Maybe a more exaggerated S-curve, like someone ready to strike. Strike is a funny choice of word. This guy looks like a batter for the New York Yankees, so that's not gonna work. Gonna go back to some straightness in the shoulders and arms, which kind of feels like a tense grip to me. A little bit more of a curvature in the body, like he's moving into this pose maybe. The angle of the sword mirroring the angle of the arms for a dramatic kind of V shape. I don't know, there might be some power there. Using an S-curve seems to offer a little more movement, so I'll try that again here. Although I'm already thinking this looks more like an athletic pose rather than a hunter's pose. So while I like the movement here, I don't exactly think it suits Vladimir. Okay, so I'll go back to some C-curves mixed with straights kind of thing. And I guess I like the movement, but it looks like he's in a dance recital, not killing someone in cold blood. Okay, this time something with more straights. The straight arms just seem to be working for me. I'll go back to that and try and minimize even the curves in the body. I'll stretch his back leg far back as though he's currently transferring weight to his front leg maybe. But I don't know, something about this feels posed, and here's where I get lost in the woods a bit. So we move on. Twisting the upper body, that's a good idea. There is a murderous intent to this pose that I didn't have before. I like it. Gonna try a variation on that pose, something more in the moment of the strike. Gonna twist the upper body again. I think that works for the character. And yeah, I don't know, we'll add it to the collection. I'm thinking maybe Vladimir is less athletic than this, so let's see if I can communicate physically imposing without the histrionics. And notice that even though this pose is more static, it's not straight up and down. And for the first time, I think that could be Vladimir. Now I want to take what I learned from that pose and bring it all the way back to my first pose actually, getting a static yet lumbering sort of thing. Somebody hunting, moving slowly, methodically, transferring weight to that front foot. Some nice contrast in the straighter left side and the more curvy right side. Alright, so here are my 3 favorite poses. I think this one really captures the sheer physical presence of the guy. I also really like the proportions on it. However, it doesn't really communicate his intent, and that's a problem when you're trying to sell a character. This one definitely has intent, but it just doesn't look to me like how a burly guy would walk. Okay, this one seems to have the intent, the plodding sense of weight, and the bullheaded confidence of a man who is really strong, but maybe not professionally trained with his weapon. I feel like Vlad lives somewhere in there. So let's move ahead with this one. Silhouette is a strictly two-dimensional understanding of your drawing. So what I'm doing here is I'm just filling my gesture in with an opaque black brush, kind of guessing at the silhouette to start. Of course, having that gesture kind of preloads my silhouette with action. Alright, but now I can hide the gesture. Let's make a duplicate of our silhouette, drag it over here, and do some iteration. I want to see what happens, like for instance, if I move the head over here and made him lean in more. Maybe I can tweak the action of the shoulders, getting specific about where exactly they cross the head. Negative space is critical as well, so I'll start designing this piece of negative space to see how it affects the readability of this pose. Also, because this is a silhouette, I can just do crazy things like grab this leg, maybe move the pivot point up here, and like bring this leg in. The reason I'm doing that is, remember I said that I like the straightness of this side? Well, here it was kind of like a little like that, and I want to make it more straight just to see if that works. Of course, I'll have to straighten out his foot here. So let's speed up the video a bit and just do some more iteration. Tweaking shoulders, and ooh, I really like that tweak. That series of straights really make it feel like he's leaning into this. At this point, I'll bring in my first piece of reference for these heavy-duty construction pants. I'm looking at the specific silhouette shapes in here as the fabric collapses onto itself at the bottom here. The thickness of the fabric makes very characteristic shapes, and I think putting some of that in here would really help my design, both on a silhouette level as well as a realism level. Maybe right around here as it folds near the shoe. Now be careful here. See what I just did? I just made the same shape twice. That is a design no-no. Repetition like that can draw too much attention, and it's so easy for it to sneak into your drawing. Undo it, and I'll try again. Maybe I'll get rid of this one and go back to this one, and maybe smooth out that one, have it only a little bit. I also like these pockets here. It reminds me of like a saddlebag on a motorcycle. I think they add a lot of interest to the silhouette and would fit this character's choice of clothing, so I'll put that in and just see what happens. I'll be very careful about navigating the negative space where it hits the arms. You see, what I don't want to do is accidentally do this. That looks a little foul, unfortunate, so let's bring back that valuable negative space. See, the silhouette is your chance to achieve the fastest and clearest read. These two photos both show me holding a mallet. This silhouette communicates that information, and this one does not. Burying critical elements inside the silhouette is usually not the best design choice. The viewer needs more time and more information to resolve this picture, and that can be a real barrier to their interest. Whereas this reads clearly and quickly, even at a great distance. I find designing the silhouette really fun. It's a great place to experiment with shapes. Here I'm trying out some complexity on the pants, but I think it kills the straight too much. I'll remind myself that there's lots of room for complexity later when I am dealing with the inside of the silhouette. Okay, just making a few final adjustments, and let's look at this. Here's where we started, and here's where we ended up. Before, after. I think we can all agree that's an improvement. And I'd like to explain something else that I think is contributing to that. Let's call it a rhythmical awareness. Look at this area here. See how jumpy and staccato that rhythm is? Compare that to this rhythm, which is right next to it, and we get that longer sense of relief. It's a visual cadence I was able to refine here that in this stage was not quite present, because in that stage I was focused on other things. Also, recalling these small negative spaces, my personal philosophy is the smaller the shape, the simpler it should be, because a simpler shape is more likely to read at scale. Alright, let's move on to the third topic of the day. This is a drawing by one of my favorite figure drawing instructors, Glenn Vilpu. This drawing has a strong sense of form, meaning three-dimensionality. Now, a gesture of this drawing might look something like this. There's no solid form there yet, but we can now build it. One thing I learned from Glenn is to look at the axis of the shoulders and the hips. In this drawing, you might think those two lines are parallel, but that is rarely the case. In this example, I think it's more like this. Those two axes give me a starting point to lay in some basic forms. Boxes have been used since forever to help artists understand the most fundamental plane changes. But using two boxes, one for the ribcage area and one for the pelvis area, helps me visualize the different three-dimensional orientations at play here. In fact, I'll even draw a center line down the model to embed this information in my drawing. I'll throw on some quick tone here, and now we're really seeing in 3D. I'll expand on this by adding some cylinders for the arms. I like to figure out the start and end ellipses before connecting them. And I'll do the same thing for the legs. Now at this point, I could go in and layer on things like anatomy, or more specific breakdowns of each part. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's go back and start building up our character. I'll use the top planes of these boxes to help me understand their orientation. Now instead of the box, this time I'm drawing an egg form. That's the ribcage. The ribcage is a formidable volume, and can really help your understanding of the bulkiness of the chest. It's particularly useful here as this is a big burly character. Now the ribcage still has boxy side and front planes, so you can imagine both at once if you want. These are all classical life drawing tools, and spending time learning them really revolutionized my ability to draw. Anyway, I put a center line in, and now I'm simplifying the head into a box form. Underneath that, a cylindrical neck connects to the ribcage. And here come more cylinders to help me figure out the orientation of the arms, and back to boxes for the hands. The legs are very simple cylinders, and by the way, if you want to convert those cylinders into boxes, you can do that quite easily. You know, what I'm doing right now is not even really character design. It's simply understanding three-dimensional form, which is a prerequisite to good drawing. An experienced artist learns to see this way naturally, and is able to convey this information without having to literally draw it. But I have seen a lot of people kind of skip this part of their learning. And if that describes you, my recommendation is the life drawing classroom. Now I can start using that 3D information to work inside the silhouette, and figure out some tricky things like how that arm is pressed up against the chest there, and the mass of the shoulder behind it. I could even start figuring out the folds in the clothing. Now that's something I'll cover in the next installment of this series. Speaking of clothing though, I have this reference, and I want to fit the chest piece around this guy's burly chest. I can't copy the reference, it's not the same character or angle, but I can use its information, in this case the design of those overalls, but then reapply it three-dimensionally to my drawing. Those overalls wrapping around the form is a great way to reveal the three-dimensionality of the character. And as a designer, you're always looking for opportunities to do that. Here I'm just painting away some of my construction lines so I can get a better sense of what the actual design is looking like. And at this point, I'm working on both the 2D silhouette, that is the outside, and the 3D inside. These straps on the overalls wrapping around to the back here are yet another great excuse to show the three-dimensionality of the character. And I'll just quickly lay in the head here with again some basic forms, essentially just figuring out the eye line, the center line, setting the stage for designing the actual face later on. I can do other things like wrap lines around his waist, which might later become a feature of his clothing, like a belt or something. Just gonna see if I can punch up that strap a bit, mass in some quick tone to separate the clothing elements. Now, one unfortunate thing that happens to me when I draw like this is my drawing tends to stiffen up, so it's never out of the question to blast out an entire area and retry it. In this case, I think I can get a little more torque in that shoulder, recalling that upper body twist I had in some of my gestures. And I'll do overhauls like this right up until the end. Like Drew Struzan said once, it ain't sacred until it's finished. Okay, let's put old Vladdy in the corner for a second. So to me, form has two overall categories. The basic geometry, which is what we've been dealing with. Then a second category, anatomy. We'll come face to face with anatomy in those gigantic forearms. Currently, we have a tapered cylinder, and that's a start, but forearm's a little more complex than that. So we have to increase the resolution here. First, I'll map out the elbow, which is kind of a mini box, and I need to indicate where the upper arm is, so that I can add this group of ridge muscles. They originate from the upper arm and wrap around the cylinder toward the thumb and are responsible for that signature bulging contour of the forearm. Next, we can map a line from the elbow to the upper outer corner of the wrist. That's the ulna, the bone. I'm also converting the wrist into a boxy form. Next, I'm landmarking the lateral epicondyle. That's the little dimple next to your elbow. From that point comes a group of extensor muscles. They too have a twisting action. a kind of winding river-like flow, culminating at the top plane of the wrist. Also, the extensors can overlap the ulna near the elbow. Okay, a third group of muscles, the flexors, originate from the medial epicondyle. That's the other dimple hidden by the elbow in this view. They flow around like a lazy river to the palm side of the hand, and they're responsible for the other signature bulging contour of the forearm. Overall, the forearm is twisty and flowy, but it's offset symmetrically. Not respecting that aspect of the forearm is a common mistake. In fact, I'll have to address it in my drawing, which is currently too symmetrical. I think anatomy best fits into your fundamental study after you have some basic 3D drawing skills. And where can you study these forms? Well, the Life Drawing Classroom for one, or you can go to Proko's channel. He's got the anatomy thing pretty much covered. Alright, now let's take a closer look at the head. I'll show you how you can start modeling this. I shot a photograph here of my Asaro head. The first thing I'll do is use the temple and cheek area to separate the head into front and side planes, which is very valuable overall information. These planes here make up the bottom 2/3 of the front of the head. This plane is oriented upwards more, so I'll give it a lighter value for now. And now I'll use a darker value to delineate the side planes of the head. Now, this is just a temporary design for the sake of this breakdown. I want to be a little less rigid in my actual design, but these are the underlying fundamentals I'll be using later when I am designing more freely. Now I'm working out how the nose feeds into the brow and carves out the eye sockets. And for the sake of this demo, I'll just mask the eye sockets completely in shadow, which does happen quite often in real life. Then I can refine my contours here, getting the right thickness of the cheek and protuberance of the brow. I'll work my way down to the mouth here, figure out a general shape for it, and more importantly, get in this underplane. This one right here. It really helps describe the depth of the mouth. Okay, the nose is very boxy. It's got clear front and side planes, so I'll figure out where those go. Throw a little tone on the side just for clarity. What I'll do now is think about like the nose casting a shadow onto the muzzle, deepening the darks in the eye sockets to show their depth more, the head casting a shadow onto the chest. I mentioned the muzzle just now. We humans have muzzles just like animals do. They're just far more narrow. From this angle, it has an egg-like shape, like this. And you can trace it rhythmically from the wings of the nose, past the corners of the mouth, right down to the chin and back. If you want a deep dive on this stuff, I have a 7-hour class that focuses exclusively on the many planes and rhythms of the head. I encourage you to check it out. Last but not least, the brow has a protrusion here, known as the superciliary arch. Say that 10 times fast. There's also the brow muscles underneath there. Not only does this set off the dimension of the brow, but you can design it to look very masculine, which is probably what I'll do for this character. Okay, so I'll quickly implement these things in my design, keeping in mind that this is a character design, not an anatomy textbook. So just enough anatomy to help move this thing forward. For the head, I'll keep it suggestive with shadow shapes for now. My preference is to leave the face for later when I'm working in color, but that's coming up next in the series. This is just a little sneak peek at part 2. We'll be getting into lighting and painting and color, and start making our design look real professional. And hey, I've got an art challenge going on my Discord, where you can design Vlad along with me. And if you're a patron, I just might feature your work. So stay tuned, I'll see you in part 2.